Wasabi guys, Void here, coming back at you with another 10 underrated commander cards. Now, this is going to be another 10 we typically do here, and if you're new to the channel, this is just taking 10 cards that maybe you don't see enough commander play, or whatever play they do see is rather narrow. So let's get started here. The first one we have here is Lotus Petal. Basically a one-time use for a Mox, and then you sacrifice it. Obviously you get the mana there. Sees very little play because of the fact that it's a one-time card, and unless you can recur it, bring it back, which there are artifact decks that can do that pretty efficiently, it's not going to be top priority. Obviously cards like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring are usually the better options over this. It's a very good card in Commander, and I think definitely if you're playing a more aggressive style and you need to get off to a better start, it's not a bad option. Then we have Hushwing Gryff, basically the flash into play creature version of Torpor Orb. It is one more mana expensive than Torpor Orb, but still it is a hate card, and I think even Torpor Orb is underrated as well. If we were going to have that discussion, it sees more play than Hushwing Gryff, though. It's why I decided to go with Hushwing Gryff. But for the sheer fact that there are so many decks that rely on ETB effects, having a card like this that you can flash into play, it has that advantage over Torpor Orb that you get a body with it too, so you have something that can block for you if you absolutely don't need it. And it does have flash, so you can do this in response to, say, something like a Craterhoof or a Rise of the Dark Realms, anything that gets a ton of either some really awesome ETBs or a ton of ETBs. Really good card to hate on those types of decks. Then we have Stonehorn Dignitary, another kind of hate card. The only difference is this relies on an ETB being able to abuse that. Whenever it ETBs a target opponent, they skip their next combat. Very good card, and especially if you were to go into 1v1, being able to flicker a Stonehorn Dignitary with something like, say, Brago or Rune of the Hidden Realm, or if you have a Deadeye Navigator or a Conjurer's Closet, a very powerful card to shut down one of your opponents. Very good and very underrated as well. I don't think a lot of people choose this when it comes to their options in white for those types of decks. Then we have Fate Spinner here. Again, kind of a hate card, not so much though. I feel like it more or less just forces your opponents to think about what they do in the game. They can choose to skip their draw, or they can choose to skip their main phases, or they can choose to skip their combat phase. Whichever one they choose, they have to skip each instance of that. So if they get an extra combat phase, they have to skip it, which I don't know why they would choose to get another combat phase if they already chose to skip it earlier. But if they choose main phase, they have to skip both main phase 1 and main phase 2. So you have to basically choose between, do I want to draw a card, do I want to play spells, or do I want to attack, which most of the time it's going to force players to skip their combat phase, which is very, very good for you. Especially in blue, you want to play more defensively, and this is the type of card that can help you do that. Then we have Frost Titan. Now, out of all the Titans, the most well-known ones are Primeval, which is banned, Grave Titan, Sun Titan, and even Inferno Titan has its usefulness, but Frost Titan is easily the most underrated out of the bunch, mainly because it doesn't synergize too well with a lot of blue strategies. Blue isn't really known for the most spectacular, creatures, just beaters in general. Blue isn't known for being on the attack, and this is a very attack-based card. Obviously, you want to get the triggers whenever it attacks. So whenever you do that, you get to tap a target permanent, and it doesn't untap. Obviously, you can also flicker it and get the same exact trigger. Another great thing about it, too, is that whenever it would get targeted, the opponent has to pay an extra 2 mana or else it's countered. So it's another one of those deterrent-based cards that you have to deal with it, and you have to pay more mana to get rid of it, or else it's going to just fizzle out, and you get to keep your Frost Titan. So it's a very good card, and I think if you wanted to make more of a combat-focused deck with, that splashes blue or has any sort of affiliation with flickering effects, anything like that, Frost Titan is definitely a good card. And if you can use something like a Rite of Replication on it, you're most likely going to be locking someone out of the game, and it's very good, very powerful. The next one we have here is Marchesa's Decree. Now, another misconception here is that you have to kind of build the Monarch keyword and all the cards associated with that around Queen Marchesa, which isn't true. This card is good in so many good decks, like Pillow Fort is most commonly where you'll see it. However, I just think it's a good card. Almost doubles as another Phyrexian Arena, but it also has that benefit of whenever creatures attack you, their controller loses a life. So it's very, very good for Pillow Fort, defensive strategies, anything like that. But the Monarchy is the main reason why you play it, because obviously your end step, you get to draw a card if you're the Monarch, obviously with a deterrent that, forces your opponents, whenever they attack, they lose life for each creature that's attacking you. That's a huge deterrent, so you're more than likely going to maintain the Monarchy with that type of effect, and especially if you have other Pillow Fort type cards out there as well. Then next here we have Radiate, a 5 mana instant here, which basically takes something that if it has only one legal target, if it has one target there, like say for instance Swords to Plowshares, this takes it and copies it for each other legal target on the field. So every other creature, and there's a Swords to Plowshares that gets copied, and it's for each creature. So you have just something that can turn a singular effect into a massive board wipe or something just chaotic in general. If someone casts a Chaos Warp on one permanent, like all other permanents legal targets for Chaos Warp are going to get Chaos Warped. So if you have something like an Anguish Unmaking and it targets a non-land permanent, it's going to exile all other non-land permanents, and it's very crazy. You're going to have so many different things going on here, and there's a lot of different possibilities. Red is a very chaotic color, and this is one of those cards that embodies it. However, there's one that embodies it even better, and that's the next one we have here, which is Possibility Storm. Absolutely love the card. So many tricks that you can do with it, and there's manipulations with cast triggers, and it's really good in Storm. If you have something like a Paradox Engine, you get cast triggers. You basically get twice the number of cast triggers because of Possibility Storm. Just a very good card, and definitely a very board warping card. One of the better commander cards in general, if I had to say so, and be completely honest. I think it is one of my favorite cards in general when we talk about the commander format, just because it's so much fun to play with, and it makes the game so much more interesting. It makes it harder for Control to do what they want to do. However, it also makes it harder for combo decks to do what they want to do. They're no longer going to rely on any specific piece or tutoring. It makes it so much harder. So you have that advantage of playing red. You have that disruption. Strategies that your opponents are trying to pull off are going to be a lot harder to pull off because of a card like Possibility Storm. Then we have Skyline Despot. Now this is another Monarch strategy based card. However, this one is a little bit more underrated than Marchesa's Decree. I feel like not as many decks consider it. It is 7 mana for a 5/5 dragon, and you do get the Monarchy. However, the difference is here, during your upkeep you get a 5/5 dragon token if you are the Monarch. So it is kind of like Dragon Master Outcast. However, it is a bit more expensive, and maybe not as worth it, but it's easier to pull off than Dragon Master is. You don't have to wait as long. If you have something like Kaalia that you can cheat it into play earlier, you don't have to worry about the land total, and it's definitely a fun card, and also gets you the card draw at your end step because of the Monarchy. It doesn't see a lot of play, and I would have expected it to, especially when you consider decks that just love dragons, and who knows, it might see an increased amount of play in the Dragon decks that are likely going to form here in Commander 2017, so definitely be interested to see how that goes. Then last here we have Wave of Vitriol, the only green card on this list, but it's definitely a very good one. If you are one of those people that complain about not having enough removal in your green decks, well, look no further than Waves of Vitriol. This definitely embodies green, probably better than a lot of cards that you'll find. Green is all about naturalizing. It's all about destroying things that don't belong to this world, to this this land that we come from, basically appreciating things that are in their natural state and just getting rid of all the artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands. And that's what it does. It forces everybody to sacrifice them. It's not a one-sided effect entirely, but it definitely is going to screw over a deck like Breya and just decks that depend on non-basic lands in general for mana fixing. They do get to search for basic lands, so it's not completely just dickish land removal, but it's definitely going to hurt the 4-color and 5-color decks the most, and as well as just going to hurt the artifact-based decks as well. Just a very powerful card, and I think not enough people consider it. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this list of 10 underrated Commander cards. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. I do a whole lot of these other videos. Be sure to check those out. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off.